Binge watching has become such a defining part of our collective viewing experience that it's easy to forget that it's a relatively new phenomenon. The practice first gained popularity only within the last decade, thanks to the rise of Netflix and other streaming services. The term binge watch entered our collective societal vocabulary around 2013. Since then, it has become so culturally ingrained that in 2015, the Collins English Dictionary chose binge watch as the word of the year. It's actually not too surprising that binge watching has become so popular so quickly, since we love instant gratification. And for a lot of people, it's becoming the standard way to watch their favorite shows. Some people actually wait until the season is over so they can binge watch shows instead of watching them gradually as they air. There's no doubt that streaming services like Netflix played a significant role in changing our viewing habits. Before that, we had to watch the shows on the network schedules. And if we discovered a show after the fact, catching a whole series in syndication would be a very long process. Another option would have been to buy the series on home video, but that would be costly, and a lot of people would hesitate to buy a box set of a show they never saw. But these days, we have the entire libraries of most shows readily available. Because of this, people can finally watch shows they've always been meaning to check out. It's also a great way to catch up on a show that everyone is talking about between seasons to be caught up to speed before it returns to the air. Binge watching has also reshaped how we measure a show's commercial success. These days, ratings aren't the only barometer of how well a show is doing. In 2013, Breaking Bad won the Emmy for Best Drama, and when the show's creator, Vince Gilligan, accepted the award, he was very forthcoming about the impact Netflix had on its success. He expressed his belief that without Netflix, Breaking Bad wouldn't have gone past season 2. And he also said that it's a new era in television, and we've been very fortunate to reap the benefits. In the past, a show like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, that in its first season barely averaged over 1 million viewers, and even less in the second, probably would have been cancelled at the first chance the network got. It would have been yet another critically adored series that didn't make it past the first season because it failed to find an audience. But instead, because of the strong performance of Netflix, the show got a very respectable 4-season run. But as is usually the case, there are two sides to every story, and as much as we love binge watching, there are some downsides to it. As 2020 has made abundantly clear, we're very social creatures, and like with most things, we enjoy experiencing our TV shows with friends and family. But the act of binge watching tends to somewhat diminish the communal aspects of watching TV shows. It's not that people can't binge watch the same show, but rarely do people binge watch at the exact same pace. It's different than when people watch the same show over a regular season. Watching a TV show as it airs inspires a discussion after every episode. There's an opportunity to speculate about what's going to happen next. But with binge watching, you don't really get to obsess or dissect an episode before going on to the next one. And the joy of seeing who guesses what will happen next is something that gets lost when everybody's binge watching on their own. The sense of suspense is another casualty of binge watching. With the old way of watching TV shows, audiences are forced to wait until the next episode to find out what happens next. When you binge watch, there is no wait. Of course, that has some advantages, but there's also something special to finding out the outcome of a cliffhanger after having waited a week. And at the end of the day, the fact is that binging allows you to go to the next episode too soon. Having time between each episode gives you room to think about and absorb what you just saw. But instantly going to the next episode takes that away. In fact, it can make the episodes blur together a bit, and the wait between seasons can seem even more challenging to deal with after becoming accustomed to binge watching. Another problem that arises from binge watching is that it can sometimes make it harder to get emotionally invested since you're devoting less time. For example, I watched Lost after it had already ended. When the show debuted, I completely misunderstood what it was about. I thought it was just a simple survival show about people who crash landed on an island. And when I finally caught on that it was a lot more than that, it already felt like I was late to the party. Eventually I watched it on Netflix. Like everyone else, I fell in love with the first season of Lost. To this day, I believe that its first season is about as close to perfection as any TV show has ever gotten. And as anyone who has watched Lost can attest, that love soon turned to frustration, anger, and pretty much the whole spectrum of emotions as I watched the 6 seasons. But I watched the entire show throughout one summer. It was definitely a roller coaster, but nothing like what audiences who watched it during its original run, over 6 years, must have felt. I still remember being in college and hearing friends talk about it every week. And when it finally concluded, people loved it or hated it. But regardless of how they felt, they were very intense about it. On the other hand, when I saw the ending, after having just seen a few episodes directly before it, there was something very anticlimactic about it. I mean, I kind of liked the end. It wasn't very original, it certainly didn't make up for the disappointing seasons, and it didn't reach the soaring emotional and narrative heights of the first season. But it was sweet and moving. But it still left me thinking, that's it? And part of that has to do with the fact that I remembered how people reacted when the series initially ended. And after finally seeing it for myself, I found it hard to believe that it could inspire such dramatic reactions of any kind. But the people who saw Lost as it aired had been following it for 6 years. For the fans that liked the ending, it was a cathartic event. And the ones that didn't, well, they wanted to riot and burn things down. On the other hand, I saw it on my laptop during one summer, and it was a very compressed and ultimately subdued version of the experience. On the other hand, shows like WandaVision and The Mandalorian could signal a return to the old model. Waiting a week between episodes certainly hasn't stopped fans from watching those shows, and they've helped rekindle the old cooler talk aspect of discussing shows, or at least a digital version of it. During WandaVision's run, you couldn't log on to any social media app without being bombarded with countless speculation and fan theories for what would happen next. And this winds up giving shows buzz and the best kind of advertising, the free kind that comes from viewers themselves. In a way, by airing one episode a week, Disney Plus managed to extend these shows' cultural relevance. It doesn't seem too far-fetched to think that had every episode made available at once, our collective interest in them would have died down more quickly. Instead, because we got one episode a week, the show stayed on our minds for a longer time. It's hard to argue with the fact that there is something undeniably satisfying about having all of our shows readily available to us. But by condensing our viewing habits, we're also losing some of the payoff, which can only come from waiting and anticipating. And I think this ultimately results in a less rewarding viewing experience.